And I think that's the beauty about a PhD, right? You form really deep connections with a lot of people, especially if they're interested in your similar topics or if they just have been a part of your PhD journey. This might change over time, but it's really important to have some of these connections.
That was the voice of Alice Rickert, the guest on this episode of The Knowledge Mill. I'm your host, Greg Yoakum. This is a unique episode of The Knowledge Mill. On the sonic side of things, Alice was game for something I've always wanted to try, recording an episode outdoors. As you will hear, the cicadas on the University of Wollongong campus provide a very pleasant ambient backdrop. We also took an atypical approach to the conversation itself. Rather than focusing on Alice's ongoing PhD research, we instead delved into the overall PhD experience in an effort to uncover and share insights and reflections on what many PhD students probably need to hear, but rarely do. Consequently, you'll hear Alice and I share personal lessons and reflect upon challenges, yes, but also the importance of fostering kindness and community in academia. We discuss common experiences in the hope that it will remind any PhD researchers listening that they are not alone in their journey, and that their community can be found along the way. Overall, this episode sees us reflecting on the vulnerabilities, triumphs, and personal growth that come with the PhD path. Alice Rickert is a psychologist and head of the research project addressing the impact of HR analytics on responsible leadership at the University of St.Gallen. As a psychologist, her earlier career included roles in organizational development, HR, and leadership training, particularly in the not-for-profit sector. Blending her expertise in organizational psychology and new technologies, her research focuses on the evolving dynamics of leadership in the age of AI. Alice is also a speaker and lecturer at various universities, colleges, and foundations, and has held several elected positions at the University of St.Gallen and the Albert Ludwigs University of Freiburg, including serving as the vice president of the Doctoral Network Association, DocNet. Currently, she is a visiting researcher at the University of Queensland in Australia. This episode of The Knowledge Mill was recorded on December 5th, 2024 on the campus of the University of Wollongong during the 37th Conference of the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management, aka ANZM. Show notes, including links to more information on some of the topics that Alice and I discuss, can be found at theknowledgemill.com/episode 14. That's episode and the numerals 1 and 4. Hi, Alice. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Greg. Nice to be here.
Thank you for participating in what for me is an experiment. We are on the ground at the ANZM conference at the University of Wollongong, and we are recording outside, which is something I've always wanted to do, but have never been game to do, and we were forced into it by a lack of air-conditioned rooms. But hopefully it turns out. I certainly enjoy sitting out here. So
I think it's quite nice, maybe to give some of the listeners some context. We have some green trees around a nice meadow. And we see the conference building, actually, so
yeah, that's right.
It's good.
It's almost like we did this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If only we had broadcast cameras, it would have been the perfect backdrop.
True.
This campus, we were talking before we started recording, it reminds me of the campus where I did my undergrad in the U.S., self-contained and lots of green spaces. But this one's even bigger, I think, in terms of just the sheer amount of land here. And you could really be walking in between two buildings and not even know, because there's all the tree cover, and it's quite beautiful. So thank you for doing this experiment with me. I hope that it turns out. Certainly we can hear the Australian audio backdrop with the cicadas back there, so hopefully that doesn't become too annoying for listeners. How has your conference experience been? We're here at the end of the last day, so you've done it.
I got through it. No, it was really amazing, actually. Yesterday was my highlight, but today was amazing also because I won a book of Rose Cameron, who is a mixed method researcher.
Oh, okay.
She's like one of the mixed method researchers, and it's really nice to meet people you've been reading their work like 2 or 3 times already, and you meet them in person, and then they're like super nice to you. That's always amazing. It's just a good feeling. And yesterday I presented some of my stuff and got really good feedback, some interesting thoughts on it. And so I think that really helped me to develop my paper further, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Which aspect of your study were you presenting on?
I was actually presenting one of my my conceptual paper, which is probably quite late for me to present now because I'm towards the end of my thesis. But I feel like having thought about that a lot already and having kind of the idea of how you have figured it out in your head at least, or you're supposed to, and then getting another perspective on it because you can coherently explain what you try to do, that can be really helpful. And in my case, I got some really good feedback from people who were like very concrete, very specific, and I think it really will help me to add something to the model.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant.
I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you want from a conference, is to actually get good feedback and engagement.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's also quality a lot of people don't have to give like on-point feedback. I also had that during the doctoral network. Yvonne Brunetto, she's a professor. She also took some time, read some stuff of me and 2 other students actually, and she was so on point with her feedback. She only read 8 pages, but she was like, "Hey, I think this might be a problem for you, and you could figure it out like that." And this can be so helpful because you hardly ever have somebody reading your work in depth that hasn't known your work for like 2 years already.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's really nice.
Maybe out like peer review, and sometimes that process can be fraught, and you don't actually get useful feedback. So, everyone's journey is different that way. But I've had some of that maybe it's hard to find peer reviewers, so you end up sometimes with people who are not expert in your field, and it's not as useful, but that's another story. So tell us a little bit about how you found yourself doing a PhD.
Oh, actually, that's a funny story because maybe a little bit about my background. My parents have both not studied, not even done their A-levels, which is in Germany a requirement to study. And so when I started studying, I felt sometimes really lost, just because the way about it, what to do, how to get around, that was in some points overwhelming. And I never considered doing a PhD because for me, only extremely smart people did a PhD. Yeah. And my ex-boyfriend at that time did a PhD, and he was at some point like, well, you could do it if you wanted to. And that was actually the first time this thought came up. And I then decided if I want to do it, what would be the topic that would be interesting to me for 3 or 4 years. I talked a lot to people who did their PhDs, asking like, if you would need to select a topic again or find a position, how would you decide? What would be your criteria? And one of the main points everybody kept telling me was, don't do it just because you know a professor, do it for the topic you're really interested in. So the next step was trying to figure out a topic that would be interesting to me. And I ended up on accident at the chair that I'm now also doing my PhD at for an internship. They originally asked or were searching for somebody for 6 months, and I basically handed in my CV and wrote them I told them I have 6 weeks, take it or leave it, and luckily it worked out. And then they offered me a position afterwards, and I had to tell them hey, still have to finish my master's for another year. They pushed the position a bit, and I finally could start. Yeah?
Okay, wow, really nice, wow, like it was meant to be.
Kind of, yeah. And then I also got I'm from psychology by training, so I also got the offer to do a PhD in psychology. So then again, I had to decide, and it can be really hard to figure out like whom do you want to work with, especially if you have been working with all of those people before and it works well. And then it's just a decision about where do you want to go, what is really going to give you a spark for the next 3 or 4 years. So yeah.
And there's a lot of moving parts there, isn't there? Because you got to put together a supervisory team, and maybe you have an expert in this sub area, an expert in that sub area, but maybe those sub areas don't necessarily get along. And
honestly, it works a little bit different in Switzerland. So when we start, and also in Germany, we don't have to put together a supervisory, or we have a supervisory team, or one supervisor at least, but we don't have to put the team together right away. We have to do that by the end of year 2, typically.
It's better, I reckon, because then you know more what you're doing and
you know your topic.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you can even I started and I knew broadly the area I was interested in, which is important so you can figure out a good supervisor in the first place. But kind of from there on, my topic developed, and I figured a year out like where do I want to specialize on.
Yeah, right. So that is a bit, because granted I started in a non-traditional way in Australia even, which was to I didn't have the advice you had. I went for the supervisor rather than the topic.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's. I knew I wanted to work with him. In fact, that was the appeal of doing it. Full stop. I reached out to him to say, what would it be like to do a PhD? And that's because it's the same thing. My dad did his undergrad, but I was the first person to do a master's and of course a PhD. And if you don't if you don't know what that looks like, you have a hard time seeing yourself in it.
Very true.
Yeah.
Also, when I started, I had no idea about what a PhD is, what it
right.
entails.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did specifically select my supervisor in the end because she's amazing in theory, and I knew this is something we don't technically learn a lot in psychology, so I really wanted to acquire that skill. Has been hard sometimes, to be honest, when you go into something and you don't know how it works, to wrap your head around it, but it was really good, yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's a field like psychology, which that's not easy, even if you do have a bit of background in it.
It's kind of like a culture clash.
Well, that's really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about, because you are toward the end, as you said, can you tell us a little bit about what you found and how it's gone?
Yeah, sure. So when I started, I got really lucky. We had, at that time, a postdoc. He's now an assistant professor at the University of Twente, Simon Schaff-Heitle. And I've told him that a couple of times, so he knows, but he has been kind of the person who really kind of mentored me in a lot of ways. I mean, of course, Antoinette did the same, so Antoinette is my main supervisor, but it was really helpful because when I started, I think after 2 or 3 days, Antoinette and Simon approached me, were like, hey, there's a conference deadline in 6 weeks. Do you want to do something? Should we try? And we did that, and we wrote one of the papers. It's called the Bermuda Triangle, where we looked at how does technology and leadership together, how does that change? What kind of abilities do you need to have in the future? And when we wrote that, ChatGPT wasn't out.
Right.
Yeah, you have to say it nowadays. And it was really interesting to see what developed out of that paper. We developed that one of the conclusions was that responsibility diffusion is going to enter the workplace. Like when you have an employee, you have a leader, and you have a technology that's actually also deciding on stuff, then it becomes a little bit blurred, like who's responsible for what. And I really wanted to dive deeper into that aspect and understand like what happens exactly. How can we make sure that leaders still feel responsible for the decisions they take? And so out of this, my whole project developed. I started doing interviews. Now I will finalize hopefully with an experiment. And it's been going great. But of course, there were times when you're asking yourself, like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
Do I belong here? Yeah. But it's overall, it has been great a lot of times because I had really a nice team around me.
Yeah. And that makes or breaks a PhD, I think, to have that support. Yeah.
People telling you can do it is a lot of it. Like,
yeah.
It's very helpful, and I got lucky in that regard. Yeah,
that's one of the inherent difficulties is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know
what to ask.
What to ask, or what the timelines are going to be. Or I remember, it was a bit of a joke at the end of my PhD. My supervisor pulled up the timeline that I made at my confirmation of candidature, and we just all had a good laugh about how wildly off I was, but I just sort of thought as well, how could I have possibly known?
I think in my interview I asked, like, could I do it in 3 years, because everybody else was kind of finishing after 4 and 5 at the institute, and she was like, if you want to. I'm now at the end of my 4th year, so that didn't work out.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I think that's better in the sense of it gives you a little bit more freedom to have false starts, which happen inevitably, and you learn from them, but they take time, and you come back and you're better focused. And
I also have to say it was planned at some point. So if you really want to do an academic career, and this is something that I've been told at some point, but not very early on, it can make sense to extend the time you have in your PhD to prepare work to publish, because once you have your degree, you get compared to others.
Yes.
So if you want to achieve tenure track or go into any kind of position, we are compared based at the time after the PhD, and I think a lot of junior people don't know that, because in everything else you just have to be quicker is better. I think PhD time is a little bit different, so if you have the chance, want to go to academia and your supervisor has the funding for you, extend your time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big, because, that was something else I was going to ask you, is if you were doing a traditional thesis or going by publication, because if you do it quick, but you just come out with a thesis, or you take a little more time, you have the papers, you get the peer review, that makes the thesis better, and you have publications.
True.
Then you're well placed.
I actually do a monography, but I think in papers. So I have designed it in a way that I can publish it in papers afterwards, and I think that's important if you want to want to go that avenue. So it's kind of both. I try to present my work at conferences a lot to get the peer feedback that you need.
Yeah, and that's critical, and it sounds like you got the good feedback here, which is always it's nice when it works out the way it's meant to.
Very true. Yeah.
Sometimes you get questions that are comments rather than, and maybe it's a little bit aggressive. But
no, I mean, questions and comments are fine still, right? Sometimes you also have people who are just like very critical or give you really bad feedback about what you've been doing, and it can be hard to come back from that.
Yes, that's right, especially if that's the only interaction you have with that person. Yes. You don't have any broader context of where they're coming from, and then it just, I don't know about you, but that kind of thing lives rent-free in my head for a long time after. But, I think this community, this is my first ANSM conference, but I think Australians kind of full stop are more laid back, and you don't really run into that. So I'm not sure, have you been to some overseas conferences? Is the vibe different?
It is different, but I've experienced that overall in academia, a lot of people are just like very friendly, really trying to help you to advance your work. At URM this year, I had an amazing interaction with a scholar, not even considered like focused on the research, but we were talking about academic career tracks, and at some point we figured we're roughly interested in the same stuff, and she's teaching a lecture. Her name is Ali Nima, and I told her, like, if you ever need somebody to come and talk about research, I would be totally interested in that. And she was like, okay, let's do it. Let's schedule that, because she knows it's important for me to have to kind of show, okay, other scholars are interested in my research, but at the same time, it's just good practice. And I feel like a lot of times we have the possibility, if you reach out and tell people like, hey, this is what I tried to do, this is what I still need to get into my CV, or this is something I would really be interested in. A lot of people will offer a helping hand. But be aware, don't just send out your work.
Yeah, that's right.
Some people also steal and copy it. So just...
That's true, yeah. Especially if you don't have a pre-existing relationship, you don't know how dodgy they might be.
Even if you have, like right at the beginning of my PhD, that was somebody I thought was a friend. Turned out they weren't, and they were asking for help on a paper, and we're like, hey, could you help me design an experiment, because I've done that quite a lot. And so I was like, yeah, sure, let's talk about what you're doing here. Is that interesting? Oh, it is. And I kind of really redesigned the whole experimental design. And in the end, I didn't hear from I'm going to say them, so that nobody knows what I'm talking about. I didn't hear from them for quite a while, and then at some point, I think about a year later, they approached me again. We're like, hey, I'm doing my third study. I also want to do an experiment. Could you give me some pointers? And I was like, hey, what about our first study? And they told me like, oh, my professor liked it so much, we actually decided to publish it with 2 people from Stanford. So, but you can be on that new paper. And I was like, this is not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think their professor didn't know I was involved, but that kind of can complicate friendships. We're not friends anymore now, obviously.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it also can feel shitty, so be very restrictive with your time.
Yeah, that's, you have to protect yourself, and especially at the end of the PhD, I've heard some horror stories about people getting scooped.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because you have to publish something that's novel, of course. Someone goes out with something before you, you're back to square one. Yeah. Those things happen too.
But I also have to say, like, I had amazing people offering me a hand, or just offering peer feedback, and these people are oftentimes not acknowledged on papers, and they still do that. They engage with your work, and high quality feedback can really make a difference to get a paper out there. So yeah.
I think it makes for a nice community if you can do that and establish those links, and eventually, not that it has to pay off, but eventually, if this person has given you some feedback on a project, now they know what you're working on, and they know what wheelhouse you're in, and you obviously already know about them. Now you're linked up. Maybe you collaborate on something in the future, and or they just extend a hand. So I had some people do that to me, like helping me on my journey, and I now try to do that for junior scholars. So that's a really nice thing about academia too. So we have to always see both sides. Yeah, that's right. That's something I miss about my PhD candidature, full stop, is that you sort of come in and you don't know what you're doing. But if there are people in your cohort, maybe in the middle, maybe toward the end, they're kind of your big brothers and sisters, and then eventually you become those people, and you have little brothers and sisters, and then you all graduate and go from there. Yeah,
very true. I made some really good friends during my PhD time. I think you need to have both. You need to have people you love to work with, but then you also need to just have people who you love character-wise, like for the person they are, even if your research is totally different, and you can still learn so much from each other. So that's
That's right.
Optimally, you like all of these people, like the people you work with and the people you're friends with.
Yes, that's right. But it's interesting what you say, because there's some people that I work with that I've spoken about on other episodes of this podcast. Actually, one of them was on an episode, the very first episode of this podcast, David Rickert. And we had accountability meetings, this circle of friends when we were doing our PhDs, and I was toward the end and they were in the middle. And so for me, it was working on publications and kind of getting over the line, and for them it was starting all of that. And so they really benefited from me having already gone through some of that, and I benefited from just being able to have a sympathetic ear to sometimes complain or share those horror stories with people who understand, because to someone outside of academia, even like my wife, for example, she knows what I'm doing, but it's and she's done 2 master's degrees, so she's been in it, but it's not sometimes I tell her things and she's like, this academia is so weird. Like, yep.
We are to a certain degree. So everybody who's looking for some resources to manage this kind of process, the book How to Write a Lot is a really good starter.
Okay.
And it's short, so you don't waste a lot of time reading it.
Yeah.
I also have such a group. We keep a writing diary to make ourselves accountable, and it actually helps you to notice how slow you are.
Right.
And how over-ambitious with goal setting you are, getting you more realistic to also then see your timelines. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that opened my eyes up to is just the nature of process. That like trying to estimate how long it would take to write a journal article is like asking how long is a piece of string. You know what it looks like, but
getting there.
Yeah, it's but if you have sympathetic ears, people who are also going through the same thing, you help each other out. Maybe you get a little closer to understanding something that might be a little more realistic in terms of timelines and targets. I think that can be something that gets lost, I think, sometimes, or forgotten, is that PhD students are students. We're learning. That's why we're there. And like we said before, sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know. So.
And I think it's like being kind to oneself is a big part of it. Like if you don't meet a timeline, just talk with your supervisors about it.
Yeah.
Most of the times they do understand this because they've been there before.
Yeah.
And if you get really stuck, I keep telling people, like, that's the moment you have to walk away. If you're really stressed and you know a deadline is coming up and you have writer's block, or you're so stressed out that you don't even sleep anymore, that's the moment you have to take a break. It's hard, but you have to.
Yeah.
And then move on.
Even if you just, one of the greatest discoveries in my PhD was that there was a shower downstairs.
Yeah.
And I would go down to the change room and take a shower, and sometimes that was all I needed to just reboot my brain and get back into it.
Don't walk away too long. That's also
that's right.
like you have to go back to the desk, but give yourself a set break, like maybe the weekend off. I made it a point to not work on Sundays, so I don't do that. And most of the weekends you would never see me in the office, just because, not because I'm lazy, just because I feel like it's really important to make sure to maintain your mental health. And after the deadline is the next deadline, so you have to have that kind of structure for yourself.
If you're a workaholic, you hit a point of diminishing returns.
Yes.
Because if you go harder and harder and harder and you drain yourself, like, you're still working, but not as effectively as if you would have just taken a break and come back, and you'd be ahead.
And it doesn't mean that you don't sometimes do a weekend, right in front of a deadline. That's part of the deal. Yeah. But you have to make sure that you, especially in shared offices, don't get this kind of everybody is there, like on Saturday and Sunday, and nobody's effective anymore, but everybody is there, like presentism.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Which maybe the pandemic helped us break a little bit, that because now I don't know what it's like where you work, but around the business school at UTS, it's very rare to see another person, PhD student or academic. It's just people just aren't on the ground in their offices or at their desks.
Oh, that's a pity.
Yeah, I'm glad I finished before all of that, honestly, because that's one of the things I really liked, is having one of my best friends sat right across a partition. Our 2 desks, we faced each other, and sometimes it would just be one of us would just like slap our hand on the desk and be like, we got to get a coffee. Just then that would be the little break, and we'd go get some caffeine and get back to it. But I would miss that if it hadn't happened.
I think I've experienced both. I'm right now in an office where everybody comes into the office and we have lunch together. It works really well because a part of that, we try to not interrupt each other. I also have been in a shared office where nobody comes in. I can be very lonely.
Yeah.
But I also love the times when you really just have to get something done, especially if you have to read a lot or think something through. Nothing can be more frustrating than if you had an idea and then somebody interrupts you and you can't finish that sentence or the idea is gone.
Yeah.
That's the worst feeling.
Yeah, that's right. There was a while there where I had these little wax earplugs that I could roll up and put in, but they worked so well I had to put a sign on my desk that says, "I'm wearing earplugs."
Yeah.
Tap my shoulder if you need me. But that was usually enough to keep people away, so...
I have like noise cancelling headphones that you don't really see. So I put up a sign like, I'm not ignoring you. I have noise cancelling on.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to come off as rude, but as well, you don't want to be interrupted every hour. So, and that's kind of that's the flip side to the pandemic thing, right? Is that now when you do see someone around, it's rare, and you do want to catch up, and sometimes you can distract each other.
True, yeah. I'm right now in a new workspace because I'm a visiting academic at UQ at this moment. And when I arrived, I tried to meet up with a lot of people. So that can be really helpful to engage into a new scholarly community. And I think you have to do the same at the university you're starting. Like if you start your PhD, try to meet other people.
Yeah.
Maybe not like you should have a topic what to talk about. So if you're just really at the start, consider is that the right time point to, I don't know, meet a professor or maybe later on. But try to connect with other PhDs and then also to share experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of those opportunities have gone away with the pandemic, but I think it is hard to know how to best do. Like I think there are some people who would just go up to that professor and be like, "Hey, I just started, and I may not be here in 6 months, but I want you to know who I am."
Depends on the professor. Some really appreciate that, some don't. I think it's just really important to connect with your community, because there are some shared experiences there. And it can really help, especially, I mean, we very, very shortly talked about that before the podcast, but in my role as the vice president of the doctoral network at St.Gallen, but also I've been around a bit to conferences. I've met a lot of other PhD students, and I feel a lot of us make the same experiences, but we don't really talk about the bad ones so much.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think part of that is struggling with being lonely, feeling incompetent, asking yourself, what are you doing here? I think that's a huge part of it. Everybody has experienced it.
Yeah.
If you experience it, it's very normal. The ups and downs of feeling competent, getting the hang of it.
Syndrome, hey.
Very much, yeah. But also, if you're like, especially if you're a woman in academia, that's different than being a male in academia. Like the program I've started in, 70% are male PhD students.
Okay.
So that of course gives you a different perspective on a lot of topics. It also gives you a lot of different experience that you meet at conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. Has that changed at all while you've been doing your PhD?
It did over time. I think the experience that you make is different. I feel like a lot of people are very aware of trying to not, engage in an inappropriate way. But I mean, when I start, during my PhD, I've attended quite a few conferences, and I had the situation where somebody pulled me to the side and was like, "Hey, just so you know, maybe try to avoid that professor because he's one of the ones." Oh, right. And that's kind of that's a weird feeling as a woman. I had quite a few of these experiences, and then you have the other side of the coin where we are I think we shouldn't put too much spotlight on the people that are behaving inappropriately, because there's also the other side where people are so afraid of being told they behave inappropriately that they would rather not engage with you because you're a young woman.
Yeah, sure.
And they're like, I don't want to get into any kind of bad reputation, and I get that. But also, if you meet up in public spaces, I had it that other people commented on somebody else being like, "Hey, we should talk about research," and the whole conversation beforehand had been about research. So it was very clear this is a connection that's going to be about publishing together or working on something together or just exchanging ideas. And then another third-party person that has also been in academia for a while, oftentimes senior people being like, ooh, I'm not sure if your wife would like that, and that's so weird.
Yeah, but they're projecting that onto the situation rather than...
They are, but in the end, what comes out of that is that people then are afraid of collaborating with you, that they cannot mentor you as much, and this then excludes you from networks, and especially in academia, networks are so important and crucial for your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I really don't want to diminish the problem of having people behaving inappropriately, but I do want to point out that we have to kind of find the middle ground here where we have to still be able to connect with people.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that angle of it, that someone else projecting something onto a situation that isn't there would have implications for you, even though you didn't ask for that, and that isn't what was happening. I hadn't thought about that. Something that I have been aware of before, and I think this is my attempt to just be aware and not be a part of the problem, I guess, is even though I know that I'm not up to no good, I know that there are certain things that I wouldn't do. For example, with this podcast, if I were traveling, say, to Melbourne for this has come up actually before, that it would have been very a lot more convenient to have met and recorded with a female student in my hotel room, because she lived 2 blocks away from my hotel. Yeah. But that would not be appropriate, and so you just don't even want to go there. Keep it on the conference grounds, and even though nothing bad would have happened, and she knew me, so she knew she was safe and everything else.
But I think it's still a good idea to stay in that public spaces and that. But you still gave her the chance to be on the podcast, and I think that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
To still allow people to have the same opportunities and experiences. And I just wanted to point out, this is not something I've experienced at my specific uni or at one uni. It's something that kind of goes through whole academia, because we all try to find this delicate balance of what is appropriate and when do we make somebody else feel uncomfortable. And so maybe to clarify, I think to navigate this, it's really important to have a network, to for one get support if you need it, and have people have your back, but at the other hand also have people connect you to other people, because that allows you to build your academic career, that allows you to build a network. And maybe we should all think about that a little bit more, like how can we extend a hand to somebody in a good way? How can we help them? Because I had some people who were amazing, who really extended their hand, who helped me up, and that's really amazing if you have that. So. Yeah.
But if people are afraid because they think something could be taken the wrong way, or that's right. It's I knew that I was aware, again, broadly, academia around the world rather than just one specific context. I was aware that women, for example, just to stick with the theme of women, would be looking out for each other and cluing each other into maybe not him, or look out, or stay in public places, or don't go there, whatever. And so I think that's necessary, because definitely you don't want to get into a bad situation. But it's sad, and I think it's limiting, because it not that you want to be connected to someone who's dodgy, but
they are still the people in power. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
They're still on the committees. They're I think another part of that is we have the same stuff in business, right? I mean, I've been told after, I would say I'm kind of an expert in my own topic. I've done the research for 4 years now. Nobody knows what's happening right now, because it's also in business evolving. So we are at one point in time where we are ahead of business, which is rarely the case in research.
Yeah, that's right.
Normally we always follow up. And so I got lucky with that regard, but it's the same in business. So if I give a lecture and I walk into a room as a young woman and at the beginning of her 30s, or I'm at the end of my 20s actually, I have to always prove myself, especially because I talk about tech, and I talk about my research is centered on a male-dominated area, actually, although it's in HR. Most of my participants in interviews were male, although it's in HR, because it's HR analytics. Right. And while that was during the interviews sometimes a benefit, because you get underestimated, so people tell you like everything from the beginning and rationalize a little bit more, that can be very helpful for interview research. At the same time, it can be really hard and frustrating, because I know if I walk into that room, first of all, I have to think about what I wear. Like, I think none of my male colleagues ever considered, is this too sexy?
Right.
Is this, like, I don't think that anybody ever thinks about that before giving a talk. And then the second thing is, I know also that there's one question in the room that's probably going to just see how well I do, how good I know my stuff.
Right.
And then once you've passed the question, they kind of just believe everything you say.
Yeah.
But you have to always prove that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes they might even be throwing out banana peels for you to potentially slip on. And
I mean, a lot of people are also very kind, but then you have like these tiny comments like, oh, we already had like 2 young women in this executive program, we need somebody else. And I'm like, who's somebody else in that regard? Somebody male?
Yeah.
I mean, if these are the people who know the expertise, why does it matter? And then that can feel frustrating.
Yeah, as if there's a certain number of females that's correct.
Yeah. But if you talk, I've made the experience, if you talk with people about that, or like, hey, I really would love people to reach out more, then you also have amazing people who are like, oh yeah, that's right. And then they offer or get you into the networks you need to go into. So arriving here in Australia, I tried to engage with the practitioner community of HR analytics, and I met some amazing people. Just reach out, was like, hey, I would love to talk about what I'm doing. Would you experience what you're doing? Raising that issue at some point over drinks. And just like that, a few weeks later, this person approached me and was like, hey, I'm sitting on a panel. Would you like to also come? And with no kind of, that was just trying to help you out, establish your network. And these people are so valuable to your own career. And I really appreciate that, because they also always need to look out for their own reputation. Yeah. So my major 2 points are, first, don't judge other people if they're like engaging with the other sex. Maybe try to allow people to build a network, to mentor other people, but at the same time also watch out for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So both.
Yes, safety,
but also helping. Both. Be kind. Yeah. I know it's a controversial topic, and as I said before, I don't want anybody to feel like their experiences don't matter. There is a lot of bullshit happening in academia. We had a lot of scandals, and I think we also have to acknowledge that. That's true.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a generational component to it, and I say that from a place of hope, that the generations coming through, if we're talking about older professors who might have come up in an atmosphere where there might have been some inappropriateness with students and things like this, and maybe it was brushed under the rug because you were an emeritus professor or whatever the case was. Now we're post Me Too and everything else. There's more awareness around these kind of things, and obviously we have to wait for all of that to come out in the work. But I think it is headed in the right direction, based on what you just said, to build networks and look out for each other. And I guess I'd be interested to go back in time and do this podcast with someone back before podcasts were a thing, and be like, what's it, do you ever feel uncomfortable at a conference or raising your concerns if you feel like someone was inappropriate? Because probably they did.
I would feel uncomfortable raising that concern. I would probably just try to walk away from that situation, and I would say I'm a very outspoken person. But if something happens to you, and I think that's a lot of times people don't understand that, is you don't expect that, because for you this boundary is so clear that you're here in a professional setting, and then if somebody's just crossing that border, it's, for one, it's a surprise, and then second, it's oftentimes accompanied by anxiety, because you don't know how to behave in that situation, to bring back that border because somebody actually infringed on that. And to me it happens a lot, like if people start touching, sounds so bad, but I mean, like, if you're like in a professional setting, you typically do not interact in a like, you don't touch people. I had the situation where a student that was roughly my age, because as I started young into academia, a lot of students have my age, they then just start to grab your arm, or like, oh, where are you from, and this is my story, and then the conversation shifts, and at some point you notice, like, oh, what the hell has just happened? How do I get out of that situation? But if you call them out, even if you're just saying like, hey, I really felt uncomfortable in that situation, or I feel uncomfortable in a conversation, I want to leave. And this is then met oftentimes with punishment. Like they try to punish you, and you really have to watch your back, and that makes it really difficult. Yeah,
I think the aggressor always has the advantage that way, don't they? Because they can always just deny that wasn't what was happening. You're the one reading too much into this. And those kind of things. This
is also a problem in doctoral communities. To make this very clear, this is not just like professors abusing their power. This is a problem in every I think in business as well as in academia.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to be a good ally, try to, if you notice that, just approach somebody, ask them like, hey, do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable right now? And can I help you?
Yeah.
I've done that a couple of times, and oftentimes the person responded like, no, I don't feel comfortable. Thank you for being here in that moment.
Yeah, right.
I had situations like that.
Yeah. And then so you've got each other's backs, and
yeah. I also had a situation where a friend approached and just entered a conversation which I felt really uncomfortable. He didn't even notice. But I was so glad that he just stuck out this conversation. And I told him afterwards, like, oh my God, I'm so happy you were there. And he was like, I didn't know.
It's accidentally saved the day.
Yes, very much. Or if you I also told another student at some point, like, hey, I feel this is too much. I don't feel comfortable. And then the next day he texted me like, oh, I'm so sorry that I overstepped. And I was like, hey, it's really nice that you say that. You know, I really appreciate you apologizing. And the next thing he wrote, yeah, do you want to grab a coffee?
Oh, jeez.
I was like, you didn't got the point. And it's hard. Like, I'm very outspoken, as I said, but I know a lot of people don't feel that so confident. And also, I've been in positions when I didn't feel comfortable to say, like, hey, I don't.
Well, it would make you second guess yourself, right? Because you would think, am I reading too much into this? What's going to be the reaction if I say something? What's that going to mean for my reputation in this cohort, in this uni, in this industry? Yeah. It's a lot of things happen at once.
I think a lot of my friends have chats where they're just like, hey, this is what I got as a text. I interpret it like this. Is that correct? So kind of like...
Am I crazy or...
Yes. And how do I approach that subject in a good way? Because you also don't want the other person to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to always be kind. Also, if like somebody's making me a compliment, I'm like, hey, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But, you know, I'm not interested or whatever.
Yeah. I think maybe sometimes, probably almost certainly minority, but there would be times where someone doesn't realize they've just gone a little too far. They made you uncomfortable. But you'd like to think they wouldn't be aggressive about it if you pointed it out.
I think they're not. Also, you can, in those instances, you can just be like, hey, I'm sorry. I want to leave the situation, and it's totally fine most of the time. And they apologize. And I feel like most people are nowadays more careful, very aware of the situation. Yeah. So, the ones that are too aggressive know that they're overstepping, in my experience. So, I always say, like, if you're at a bar and you see somebody else getting or the classical example of a heterosexual relationship now, but if your girlfriend is at the bar and gets approached by somebody else, you very well know what is okay and what isn't anymore. So don't tell me just because you're in the situation, you just lose any kind of direction.
Yeah, that's right.
You should know the rules.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, just ask. Consent is a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all adults.
Yes, very much so. But as I said, like, try to also help girls getting into the networks. Don't just not go, don't just not offer this because you are afraid of reputational stuff, because this is going to keep professors out of networks. This is going to diminish female representation. And it probably is like a gender issue, not only girls. And with regards to everything, try to be inclusive. Yeah. Big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Create safe spaces, inclusive spaces, and I think there's so many different ways that we divide ourselves up, intersectionality, etc. I don't think there's anyone who always feels welcome everywhere they go. No. but certainly that's a noble goal if we can move in that direction. Where even in academia, something we don't talk about as much, although this is the situation for both of us, is people who come in from outside of academia. They have no experience with it. It's completely foreign to them. Constant imposter syndrome. And even though no one's done that to us,
I think even in academia, like, I have imposter syndrome, and it helps if people tell me, like, no, what you're doing is good. But it's like,
but you don't feel welcome, or you don't
necessarily.
You don't necessarily see. You don't feel like you belong, or you've made it, or you've earned it, or whatever. I mean, that's even when I finished my PhD, I got conferred in the middle of, we had a 100-day lockdown in New South Wales. So I was in deep lockdown, and that contributed to just sort of feeling like, okay, well, that's done. Yeah. But I didn't feel like I'd arrived anywhere. Yeah. And I still sort of felt like I out on the outside looking in, even though I now had, I mean, that is the funny thing about a PhD, right, is it's really just the entry-level requirement.
Yeah.
you go in and everyone has a PhD and you're the newest one, so.
True.
But that our uni is good about this, that we, hence I got a job right after I graduated. There were other fortunate circumstances at play there, but the uni, as a rule, tries to hire the people they've invested time and resources into. Like, that's
really?
You've trained them to be researchers, and they want to keep you there.
Oh, that's different in Europe. You have to switch universities normally.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of gotta, you finish your PhD and okay, time to move on.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for going to a different uni, because this hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it happen to others, where if you stay at the uni where you did your PhD, you're kind of always treated like a PhD student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. And you have to also grow into a new community, I feel. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing at conferences.
Yeah.
And this maybe is the full loop back to being kind and inclusive. Like, if you see somebody who looks really lost, because we've all been there, getting into new conference, new community, you don't know anybody, can be really feeling lost. Can be really hard to approach new people and just join a conversation. Yeah. So if you see somebody, maybe just approach them. Say hi, introduce yourself, or wave them over, be like, hey, if you want to join us, that's fine. Be the person that makes life easier for others. I feel that's a long way that can make this climate more inclusive. And Australia's actually really good at that. I think you guys are so good at small talk. Everything is so relaxed and laid back here.
Yeah, that's right. It's very easygoing that way. I won't say casual, but it feels casual.
But nice. People are generally just so nice.
Yeah, that's
really
right.
Nice.
I think that's one of the things I miss about those doctoral days, is they're usually day 0 or whatever before a conference. Mm-hmm. And it's all people who are in the same situation. Obviously, you were all attracted to this conference for similar reasons. There's a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram of all of your research interests. And so I find I'm an introvert. I'm very shy. I struggle with just going in cold and making small talk. But in that situation, I felt like it was easier because we're usually I was kind of older for a PhD student. I finished when I was, how old was I? 35.
But that's pretty normal, right?
Not here.
Oh, okay.
A lot of kids, the pathway at UTS is to do honors or master's by research and go straight into the PhD, convert it. So you would finish 28, 29 at the latest, a lot of people.
Oh, okay, that's very different.
I didn't even start it till I was 31, so. But, you're all in the same life phase. You meet other people who are married or have kids, some don't, but they're about to get into that phase of their life, and you're all looking ahead to careers at some of the same universities, and you're going to see each other at this conference I'm actually missing one of the conferences I've gone to every year since 2016. It's happening at the same time as this one. But I didn't have enough money to go, and I'm feeling the sadness a little bit that I'm not going to.
Because you don't meet your friends.
Yeah, I only see them that once a year, at the conference, so.
And I think that's the beauty about a PhD, right? You form really deep connections with a lot of people, especially if they're interested in your similar topics or if they just have been a part of your PhD journey. This might change over time, but it's really important to have some of these connections. Yeah. Especially if you're feeling like giving up at somebody who's just like, no, you've done that. And at some point, I had a friend who was like, we all go through that phase where we're like, I'm not sure if this is purposeful what I'm doing. I'm not sure if that makes sense. And I have one friend who literally told me, like, if you're not handing in your dissertation at some point, I'm never going to talk with you again, because it's like you need both. You need encouragement, but also a little bit like you do it.
Yeah. A little bit of a kick into gear sometimes. The stakes have never been higher. If you don't do this.
Very true, very true. And it's amazing if you come as a visiting academic. You have to engage in a new community. I met some people at a conference before that. I got really lucky. I met really nice people with whom I'm now very good friends. And then also at the department I was at, I just got so much support of people connecting me to others, trying to be supportive, giving me the opportunity to meet people that could be interesting to me as a researcher, but also to me on a personal level. So that can be really so good. And if you ask people for it, my experiences, they're very willing to help.
Yeah, right.
So academia is not all bad.
No, that's
not
right.
all stress, not all bad.
We have to air our laundry sometimes because that's how we know what we need to improve. nothing and nobody is perfect. We can all, I mean, that's where we're meant to be smart, right? So surely these are problems we could solve, and yet they persist. They linger.
They do, because it's so hard to find the right balance in a lot of ways, with your time, with your resources, with everything.
Yeah.
How you behave, how others behave. I found it's oftentimes really helpful to just speak about it. If you feel anything bothers you, just speak about it.
Yeah.
Maybe speak with some people prior to speaking to the person you're having the problem with, like how you could address that, get some peer feedback, so to say.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I would say like this, do you think that's a good idea? Then also what one has to know, and I wasn't aware of that before I started my PhD, is universities are typically a very political landscape.
Yes.
So I really hope this podcast is not going to out me being like, oh, she talks about women or she talks about the struggles of academia. I don't want her in this place. But
you know what, though? You wouldn't want to work there anyway.
Probably.
If
would
that's
be very
the way
uncomfortable for everybody.
If they reject you because of you holding these beliefs, then that's probably not the place for you.
True. Yeah. At the same time, we can't really select because there's like so few positions. Yeah. But at the same time, you have to find, this is probably why it's so important to also find some kind of impact or work outside of what you're doing in your PhD.
Yeah.
Can really take over your life.
Yes.
Make sure it doesn't. Don't make it your personality is my recommendation.
Yeah, that's right.
To also not lose yourself and maybe not have such a hard post-PhD blues. That you will still get. It's part of the journey.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's such a beautiful time. It's one of the only times, if not the only time, that you can research whatever you want, and you're resourced, and you have a lot of freedom in terms of how to go about it and how to present it, how long to do it.
If you get lucky. If you get lucky,
yeah. But, you know, it's... Yeah, grants and things like that come along down the road, but even those come with their own restrictions and timelines,
true.
You just never have this freedom again. I miss it.
That's true. And if you find a topic, like I found my topic I'm burning for, so I'm doing leadership, like responsible leadership research, looking especially how technology changes leadership decision making. And what I love about that is you are at some point the first person who knows something.
Yeah.
And that's such an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And if everything works out, in the end we will know what we have to do in organizations to make sure that leaders or humans can actually take good decisions with technology. Like, what do we need to tweak? How can we make sure they will still feel responsible for what they're doing and actually intervene if something goes wrong, which right now doesn't work. But a part of that, well, this is really something I love to think about and I love to write about that. I do also am still engaged in a foundation that I've been working with during my master's. I've worked for them first as a trainer, as a volunteer, then as an organizational developer, and then I conceptualized a workshop for them based on trauma and how we can actually help people or educate people on doing trauma-sensitive sports as a trainer. And this has nothing to do with my research.
Right.
But it's something that gives me so much purpose.
Yeah.
Because if one of the persons attending such a workshop in the end changes just one thing about how they teach sports, I will have made so much impact in this world for kids, for women, or for people who have had like really adverse experiences. And this is something I think everybody should consider if they do their PhD. Don't just focus on one thing. Maybe try to engage in more than just one thing.
Yeah.
Not too much though, because you need a lot of time for a PhD.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to be choosy about and careful, because other things then can take over your life.
Don't stretch yourself too thin.
You get involved with a foundation, you're doing really good work, and then they want you to jump on the board, and maybe now you've overcommitted yourself. And
what we did, for example, is I at some point just told them, like, hey, we got 2 times funding for the workshop, which I wasn't involved in so much, like the funding acquisition, somebody else made sure of that. And I said, like, I'm totally happy just to give like keynotes or with like big organizations where we really have a lot of stakes in. I'm totally happy to engage with that. I'm also still happy to give some workshops, but maybe it's time to get on some new trainers. And I trained the trainers on the stuff that I normally teach. So let go partly of what you're doing. It's way easier if you do it for the purpose, because
that's right.
Then it's not like your stuff that somebody else is doing, but
your ego's not tied up in it, and your identity.
Not too much,
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really nice.
Oh, it's amazing. It's something I really love to do.
Yeah.
Also, we got really good feedback, which also helps.
Yeah, that's right. You feel like you're doing, it's working. You're going in the right direction.
And in the end, it ties nicely back into what I'm doing now, because if I give executive talks or I'm speaking at a panel, I kind of learn so much from teaching for the foundation that I can now integrate into my teaching in academia, I have a different perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that really helps. But when I set out to do that, I didn't do that because it looks nice on my CV or because I thought it would help me to do something, achieve something else in academia. I did not.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you don't do everything just for...
Yeah, I agree. Advice that I give to people on the rare occasion they ask me for it is if I had made... I moved to Australia in 2009 when I was 25, and that decision was made for romantic reasons. It wasn't because I had a yearning to live overseas or in Australia specifically. But I made that decision for my happiness.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't on my radar to do an MBA, let alone a PhD. But the MBA looked interesting, so I did it. And then that led me to meet the professor who would become my supervisor. He was teaching the coursework in my master's, and we connected that way, talking about building networks. I think that's something undergrad and master's students can do as well with their professors and their fellow students that maybe they don't do so much. But, he remembered I had put my face to my name. He remembered me. He remembered I did good work as well, or at least I got good marks. And he remembered that. And so when I reached out, I existed to him. I wasn't just one of 400. Yeah. And that, again, was not something that I did on purpose. I wasn't, because, again, I'm a shy person. I'm not really putting myself out there. I just had a genuine curiosity about him and his work. And so, then I did a PhD, and now I'm an academic, and none of this would have been on my 15-year plan when I moved to Australia, especially not doing podcasts. But every step along the way, it wasn't a calculated move because of where I wanted to be in terms of income or socioeconomic status or whatever. It was just, this makes the most sense. This is going to make me happy. This is going to improve, make me a better father, a better husband, a better person. And that's just step by step. That's how I've gone, and that's what I tell other people to do. Don't overthink it. It's
a good idea, actually. Also, to what you were just saying, like, this made me a better this improved something, or I improved that kind of way. I think that's something that's really important in your journey. So I can so relate to what you were just saying. Yeah. For me, that person was in my master's and bachelor's, my supervisor. Her name is Christina Pfeuffer. She spends so much time in teaching and supervising us, which nowadays I know it's not helpful at all for her career. So I'm still amazed at how much time she took out of her everyday life just to teach us. And it's something where I learned so much from her that it still helps me to get through my PhD. So big thank you to her. At the same time, I learned from her so much about giving feedback, and that's still something I aspire to do. I try to find people where I know they do something incredibly well, and I want to do it at the same level. And for Christina, it's like giving feedback. She's incredibly smart. I want to be somebody who mentors or tries to give somebody else a head start as much as Simon does, and he's also all of them are incredibly smart, to be honest. And in terms of my supervisor, Antoinette, she's amazing in theory, like how she thinks about stuff, how logic intertwines, how you like the conceptual levels and stuff. That was something I had no idea about when I started, and I think you need to find some people and then strategically look at what do they do really well, what can I learn from them, and try to integrate that into your everyday life and work. Yeah,
I guess that's the difference between having a mentor or a role model.
Yeah, probably.
Is that you can, because I think Nico Schulenkopf is the name of the professor who was my PhD supervisor, and now we're colleagues. We work together at UTS.
Yeah.
And he's my first person that I contact if there's something that's happened that I don't know what to do. Like, what am I reading too much into this? I'm reading it this way. Do you see it a different way? And he's very good about showing me the big picture.
Yeah.
So he never tells me what to do directly in so few words, but his advice always points me in the right direction, and I figure it out myself. And so that, I reckon, is... I don't think I would have responded well to someone just telling me what to do all the time, but he showed me what
how to do it, and he lived it. Yeah. I mean, that's with a lot of people. Like my list could go on and on, right? Like my co-supervisor's like that. He's really just kind, like really appreciative of people. If he gives feedback, he's very constructive in the way he goes about it. And I think that's also something that rarely people do or can, like being really on point, being like, hey, this is your idea and I think this is a problem and this is what you got to do. And so, I met some incredible people in academia. At the same time, I also experienced some really toxic structures, and you sometimes consciously have to choose to not engage in those or to be aware. Like, it's a little bit like with your parents, where you know, like, I don't want to become that way at some point.
Yeah.
So you have to also choose in academia, what kind of traits do you want to like take up? What don't I want to take up? And who can I talk about if I have an issue? And for me, that a lot of times were women professors or assistant professors. Like Anna Yasinenko she just entered at the uni I'm from as an assistant professor, and I talked with her a lot about how did you go about it? Like, what would be your strategy? This is a paper, and then that these people take their times and they give you usually really good advice because they've been there or they know how it goes. Or Nicola Pless, who I'm just right now visiting, they just sometimes talk about issues that they are facing, and it really helps you to understand, okay, this is not just happening to me. That's right. And they can tell you how they navigated that because they are more experienced. And so that can be just incredibly helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think sometimes as well that helps with the imposter syndrome because, like you said, there's no incentive. You know, like I'm not sure about at St.Gallen, but at UTS, the only benefit that you would get from supervising a PhD or master's by research student would be if you were a co-author on publications that came out of that.
True.
You don't get teaching reduction. You don't get time in your work plan for it. So it's a thing that you're expected to do, but there is no incentive to do it. And so if someone's taking the time, that's because they believe in you.
True.
And so that always helped me with the imposter syndrome. Like, he wouldn't, like, this critique is devastating. I really thought I was onto something here, and it turns out I'm not. But the fact that he took the time to tell me means that he still respects me. He hasn't kicked me out of the uni. He's just given me some guidance, and so I could stay afloat.
What I sometimes tell I have a colleague who in the beginning really struggled to take on feedback, and I always told her, like, I feel like if we give you feedback, you feel your work has been bad. It's not. I wouldn't take the time to read your stuff and give you feedback if I would consider this rubbish. To tell it bluntly as it is. So, and I do get feedback. My professors get feedback. So this is a natural process. It's going to make your work better if you start listening to it. And I think that's something that's really hard to learn because normally when you're graduating or when you're studying your bachelor's and masters, you get a grade for what you did. So negative feedback is negative. And in the business world, it's similar. Negative feedback is really negative. But in academia, it's part of the process, and learning that can be really hard. And then at the same time, you have to surround yourself with people who believe in you. So I got really lucky with my supervisors. It's so important because they help you getting your next career step. So you rely on their letters of recommendation. And if you have a supervisor who doesn't want to write those, even as you said, they don't get anything out of it. They just have to invest time in you. It doesn't help them with their careers. And so to choose them wisely is so important if you want to, because otherwise you fight a way harder fight, and the fight can be hard anyways.
That's right.
Yeah.
You are at the end of your PhD now. And so as you look ahead, what's on the horizon for you in terms of career moves, publications?
I'm trying to do a lot of the publications now. When I started my PhD, the advice of my supervisor was give it time, think it through. I think that was good advice because a lot of the papers that I'm writing now have a little more consistency and novelty to it than I could have written at the beginning, because you just get deeper and deeper into the topic. And I really hope it works well to get it published, because that's the risky part about the strategy, right? And then I hope to get a postdoc funding and do some more research. That would be really nice. The idea is to form an international project.
Okay, I was going to ask, is there anywhere in the world maybe specifically you're looking at, or?
I would love to go back home, but I would love to also have it internationally. So right now the idea would be maybe to, it really depends how it works out, but the idea would be to maybe connect several unis in one big research project to try to kind of get knowledge together, work on stuff together.
Yeah. No, that's ambitious. It sounds very cool though. Like, yeah.
It's very ambitious, and it always, like, if you know how research commissions and funding works, you also know it can be really hard to get the funding. So keep your fingers crossed for me, please.
Yes, I will. And I'll be watching with interest to see after
how it goes. Yeah.
The last question that I ask everybody, and maybe you already answered this a bit when you were talking about your work with the foundation, is something not related to your PhD that you're excited about.
I think it's definitely foundation. So I think it's really important to try to have something else in your life. For me, that is teaching for the foundation, but also what am I excited about? I think for me it's also doing some sports, trying to get out of the house, see new stuff, travel. Travel's a lot of. I really love to travel. And then connecting to other people. It's something, I'm an extrovert, so it gives me a lot of energy. I try to connect with other people and see how maybe connect them to people they need to know, in my opinion. So I try to engage a lot in that.
Yeah, nice one. Well, see, this is where I rely on being an introvert. I rely on my extroverted friends to help with the... So I'm going to take you up on that offer that you didn't
totally
make directly, but I'm going to pretend like you did.
If you ever want to interview people in Switzerland, I'm so happy to connect you.
I would love to do that, yeah. That's I just need to figure out how to get this viral and then get some grant money or something to pay for some trips to go to other places. That's my dream. If I could do this as a full-time job and just travel the world interviewing PhD students, that would be
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alice, for sitting down and taking the time and for doing it outside. I think actually this was quite nice in the end.
Yeah. I did like it. I hope your listeners did too. Thank you so much for your time and for discussing with me a little sensitive topic.